tear gas that can release dioxin or cyanide. I think that's the most terrible chemicals that everybody in this room would consider that unsafe. But I'm trying to tell you that the greatest fear is fear itself. Okay, and we are in a very dividing world. I mean, we all admit that. And as professional toxicologists, we always have to deal with this kind of questions, especially for like environmental scientists. We have to deal with issues like dioxins, environmental, like incinerators, and so on. So what I would like to do is that explain to you what tear gas and its chemicals, and then I will explain the myth and facts of those misleading media. And then I would also like to tell you about what exactly are dioxins and dioxin-like compounds, and then I'll show you the data. But before we start, I have to also stress that perception sometimes is taking over scientific facts. So, so the decision must be made politically. So it's a political decision that has to balance the perception and scientific facts. I mean, we learn that and we teach, regulatory toxicology. That's also the golden rule. Point number 2 is that the dose makes the poison. Okay? Sometimes people, oh, cyanide, wow, very toxic, I'm going to die. You have to look at the concentrations. Okay, take home message. Number 3 is that we always study toxicology by learning the biochemical mechanism and also the data. We have to have both acting together to make a conclusion. Sometimes you see the data, they have correlation, doesn't mean that the mechanism is correct. So I'm not trying to convince you that tear gas could not produce cyanide and dioxin, but I have to tell you the tear gas, I guess nowadays most people know what they are. CS, CR, and CN, they all have different complicated names, and they all have different structures, different structures according to chemists. But for laymen, they all look the same, right? Oh, this is a ring. Oh, 3 rings, 1 ring, and then these are only rings. But what do they have in common is that they all act on one, what we call receptor. That is a protein or a compound inside our body to sense or to take these chemicals. And these chemicals, including those of your favorite food, like garlic or chili, they act on the membrane receptors that will turn on a signal for you to feel pain. That's why you have your tears and also the water you have to secrete out through these pathways to send out a signal. Of course, in the scientific domain, they would really like to find out antidote. If you can find something to block the receptor, perhaps you would not feel tear gas anymore. And so when we move on, tear gas. There are 2 different ways to put tear gas to the ground, grenade and also this projectile. I have to stress to you, perhaps I can open this video that would make the presentation more interesting. Explain to you is that there are different ways to disperse the chemicals. Those chemicals I've just described, they are not dissolved in water and they are in powder form. So we need some way to disperse them. And when we disperse them, we have to use some other chemicals. And please note that dispersion does not mean burning. And many people say, oh, we're at a very high temperature, but actually the chemicals themselves, they're not burning. At some sort of temperature control, sometimes the chemicals are melted, or higher temperature, they could be vaporized. And also even higher temperatures, the chemicals could be degraded or broken up into different kinds of chemicals. You can see that still remember this projectile, you put these chemicals and then they would burn and then release these chemicals and then onto the air. And then you could see that immediately from this photo, the climatic factors or the wind, blow, precipitation and so on will affect the dispersion. And of course, this is called King Kong, my good friend. No, I never know him. I only met him once in the Yahoo TV. Misleading media could be a problem. So one of the things that when they put tear gas, and this guy is saying that tear gas produces dioxin, which I don't think is correct. And then other people just put this, dioxin level. And then they even put up with this map. Oh my God, actually there. I was so scared. And then I started to look into the data. Hey, come on, this map is just trying to show the number of tear gas fire. Okay, by no means could represent dioxin levels, because there are only 2 points that the government is collecting dioxin from somewhere around here, Chengyi, and also I think Central, and also the incinerator somewhere in Tübingen area. So people are so scared, and then there are different groups for crowdfunding. They collect a lot of money and started to collect information and data. Now, again, I'm not a medical doctor, so Professor He is actually studying all these different clinical cases. What I'm trying to do is to explain the chemistry and the potential risk, and also the mechanism. Okay? And many people confuse with this different name, cyanide, cyanogen, and also nitrite. And these actually are different chemicals. The most toxic one is the inorganic form of cyanide that would inhibit our respiration so that we could not breathe. But these only become toxic in enclosed environment. Okay, the T gas here, you just jump over, nothing happened. Same thing is true, most people confuse this cyanide structure is toxic, but actually the organic form is non-toxic. We use them a lot in our gloves. Okay, so this is a CS structure, then they look at the CN, they imagine that would be cyanide. And in fact, in Taiwan, they have to promote the concept that CN or cyanide is not that toxic. Because many people also watch these cartoons. And assuming that cyanide could be very, very toxic. The only case that we understand cyanogen or cyanide is the methyl-isocyanate that after burning and in 1984 killed thousands in India. And again, this was from a factory making pesticides, the kind of pesticides known as carbamate pesticides. And these chemicals leaked out, tons of them, and then burn and becomes inorganic cyanide because manufacturing workers were inside the factory. So thousands got killed, unfortunately. And you can see that the general publics are actually very interested in looking into the data, and then they even release those information online. And my students actually keep sending me all this information. For example, this is the most watched or read report. The title is quite misleading. Very often they put a question mark there. But then if you look at the report, they never mention anything about cyanide or even cyanogen. They only analyze the tear gas from China or from US, what kind of chemicals do they have, and actually no chemicals could be found there. I suppose, and also K. Kong agreed with me, the temperature was so high for the grenade that they used to test it. And have to add that many of these studies, they were able only to take the bomb shell or the grenade shell to do the analysis, which is not a good or formal analysis. The hypothesis making that CS synthesis is that with this pathway, CS actually come from two guys, Corson and Stockton. 1928, they developed this chemical synthesis method to make CS gas. And this compound from this paper and also many other papers, assuming that this compound would be burned into cyanide. But actually, when I read this paper, I read this at least 4 or 5 times. That is only their hypothesis. Okay, proposed mechanism. There's no data yet. And even this one is also scary. There's only one paper that mentioned that formation of dioxin in the catalytic combustion of chlorobenzene and the micropollutant-like mixture with this platinum, so involving metals and also involving other metals. And this is one type of dioxin known as PCDD. Now, let's look more into the detail. This is a proposed mechanism only. And actually, dioxin was very famous when people figured out that Agent Orange was used. And Agent Orange consists of several different chemicals like 2,4-D or 2,4,5-T. They are herbicides and also foliage agent used in wetland war. And the mechanism is known. For some unknown reason, unfortunate side effect occurred so that PCDD dioxin was created and at ppm levels. And so my understanding is that scientists actually are so curious why PCDD could exist or produce. Almost after 20 years of study, you may click into this link and find up to 20 papers explaining or trying to understand why burning waste could produce dioxin. There are 3 conditions. Number 1, we have the carbon chemicals, right? And also chlorine. 2, the temperature. High temperature, 600, all carbon rings would be broken. And 3, a metal catalyst. Note this is on a log scale. We can see that the major chemical that it has is copper, would produce PCDD and also OCDD. But the natural containing compound, the natural amount of OCDD is always quite high. And also, look, this is log scale, and then comparing with other chemicals, copper or cupric oxide is the most significant or most important metal catalyst. So to conclude, actually, we have to understand more about dioxins. So my proposal to you is that chemically speaking, burning of CS could not produce cyanide, even if you would not get killed. Number 2, the chemicals burn down, they would not form dioxin. It requires temperature and also the time and also other conditions, and dispersion of CS could not really produce dioxins. Dioxins is rather complicated. We notice a PCDD and the most toxic chemicals known as 2,3,7,8-TCDD because these are the carbon ring. General understanding is that if we burn something with carbon, the most stable chemical structure is for the carbon to form rings. 6 carbon rings is a benzene. The more rings they form, the more stable they become and more persistent. And in this case, if there are 2 oxygen linked together, it's called dioxin. And by itself, dioxin contains many different forms by adding different numbers of chlorine onto the 2 rings. And 2,3,7,8 is the most toxic one. So therefore, when we study the toxicity of these chemicals, we'd like to study all these chemicals together. This is PCDD. Those without oxygen, we call them PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyl, 2 phenyl rings. With 1 oxygen is usually known as furan, in Chinese called fulan. You can see all these names are actually strict pronunciation translation from English. So the old days we call it dioxin, perhaps it's not toxic enough. So most people call it yi or yin. We have 2 major Chinese characters, or and yin. They are no good. So this is represent a wider group of chemicals. I don't think that most people like these chemicals, but like it or not, they could act on our body by getting into, because they are hydrophobic, they dissolve into lipids, so they could get inside to the cell membrane or inside our body into turning into cells. Individual cell, we have a receptor known as AHR, aryl hydrocarbon receptor, and then they activate the enzyme and then they become carcinogenic. And at the same time, we use this technique to do risk assessment. Because all these chemicals, they will bind to this AHR, so we develop this TEF. And then we combine all these different mixture of congeners, dioxin and dioxin-like compounds to study the combining effects to do risk assessment. for regulatory control. It's well known that this 2378 TCDD is the most toxic one, and they could bind strongly to the HR, so we use TEF set as 1. Other chemicals would set up lower numbers. And then combining the dioxin and dioxin-like compound together, and sometimes they add PCB together as well. We call this TEQ, toxic equivalency quotient. In Chinese it's called 毒性當量. So most of the time you will see TEQ from from food safety center. We usually present those data. And then what chemicals are to be added? So TEQ, we have the concentration of the chemical times the TEF, and then we add them together. So this table summarizes what chemicals should be added. The old days, they only add PCBD and PCBF, that's dioxin and furan. And later on, they add PCBs as well. It all rely on the WHO panel to decide what chemicals to be included. The most updated one should be this one, 2006. So with this concept in your mind, now we know how to study their toxicity. And here comes data. So what I did on November 15, I walked into the area. This is the famous Bridge 2. Okay, these photos are taken by me. So I start walking. I started from YIA. We are here. Okay, don't worry, it's quite far away. We are here, so we are here. Okay, so I started from walking from YIA and then collect 12 samples. Over Bridge 2, I could walk out and then come in again. So altogether 12 samples, and then 2 over at the soccer field, and also near the residence at CUHK College, and this is SHO College. These are all topsoil samples, assuming that if there were a dioxin contamination, they would be deposited on the soil. And I collected on the 15th, so after 1 week of the big fight, that the chemicals would be deposited over there. And then next week, over Sunday, that was Friday. Sunday, 2 alumni and friends, actually they were my students, and then they also collect some sample of Bridge 2. Our data are more or less the same, together with this data from the CUHK commissioned company, ARS. They also collect more soil sample, you can see covering the campus, and also water sample. I know that they are now studying the air samples, because the air sample, they only have 2 air samplers, but they need to collect more air samples from different areas. Okay, and data from CUHK, for my 12 samples, all dioxins are beyond the reference level, very low, much lower than the reference level. Reference level is the topic pack data, and also total TCBs also below this level. Of course, you may say we may add them together, but usually they do that for food samples, but not for this kind of chemicals, because for food we need them together. And then the soil samples, again, many of the samples, this is what we call the pH. And then the polyaromatic hydrocarbons, this is another kind of chemicals that collectively known as, well, not collectively, but the representative chemical is benzoyl A-pyrene, movement A. And then also way lower than the reference level. And then for the other soil sample, the pH, there's something there, but the reference level for individual chemicals are much higher than those accepted. And then 2 more slides. I selected Bridge 2. Most people concerned with this sample number 5 on the bridge. Many people, including KCON, they are focusing on OCDD, why they are so high. You know, the other chemicals, you can see that they are way below the detection limit. And then they are high, but then again the TEQ. With the TEF, after calculation, with the TEF, it's actually, you know, balanced off. So the high concentration doesn't mean that they are so toxic. I would consider this OCDD level, background level, because OCDD does occur naturally. Okay, the reasons behind there are perhaps another 20 papers to tell you why. And we also study all these different chemicals and in different samples. The most samples that also of KCON's concern is this guys here, sample S8 collected by the company commissioned by the university, S8. Total cyanide high, dioxin higher than the normal, but the reference level is 1 nanogram per gram. And so, what is this one actually? I was told that that sample was collected from this burning, the soil near this burning. So it's burned for hours over there. Okay, with that I finished in a very tight schedule. And I appreciate if you have any other questions so that I can explain to you. I hope you don't find this too chemistry.
Thank you, Professor Chen, for the reassuring data.